All right. It
Are
says
we?
we're live.
All right, cool.
Good morning. Okay, so I think I'm going to start with a poem today. So the theme today is going to be about questioning. Something I've been trying to do for a long time is learn how to properly question not just other people, but also myself and my limiting beliefs, and really ask myself what I do and don't believe in. And I've found that the way I question myself seems to be a seeking to know and to grasp and to be completely and 100% sure. And as I've like gone down that journey, it seems as though the way I'm questioning things and the stance that I'm taking as a person that's questioning is like doesn't seem like the proper way of doing it. And so I think today I just want to talk a little bit about like the stance that we take when we're questioning and how we question people and ourselves, and see if maybe we can start to sort of reframe what it looks like to question things, and see if that leads into any sort of discussion. What do you think, Brett?
Sounds good. I think it all comes down to the reasoning you're questioning, and you have genuinely seeking. So like you're not coming from a malice point. It's kind of like, do you not want it to believe? And there's an under premise in your questions, right? And not you, someone else. So it's like, where's your heart at? I like it. Questions are good.
Exactly. So I'm going to start. Yeah, I think so too, especially the way in which not just the questions themselves, but the way in which we ask them, like, what are we seeking? So I wanted to start with a poem. And so I got a little bit inspired. I don't know if any of you guys listen to Jeff P, but he does this shoulder surf reading C.S. Lewis, and recently he read a poem that had alliterative verse in it, which essentially just means that a lot of repetitive sounds in the poem that make it sound a little bit more, I don't know, just a little bit more lyrically driven. And I will say that writing it was pretty difficult, but I think speaking it is going to be interesting because it's almost like the Peter Piper picked a peck of pepper, that kind of thing. So I'll try to read it slowly, and you guys can make fun of me later.
You got it.
All right. So the title of this is A Quest Within the Question. Ask with open hands, not hands that hoard, hungry for answers. For grasping gathers little, and gentle hands gather gifts. Because every question is a quiet quest, a wandering road rolled up inside the word, just waiting for willing feet to walk it. To ask, not to capture, but to come closer, to conquer, but to discover, not merely to know, but to notice. So walk without wager and seek to leave behind your trophies, your titles, your tediously tied up conclusions, for wander walks well with the willing. So when another offers their words, do not drag them towards your dwelling. Walk their woodland, weather their winds, follow their footsteps through field and forest until their foliage feels less foreign. Ask, what river ran here? What rain raised this root? What sorrow shaped this soil? What sunlight still survives? Listen long enough for another's landscape to loosen the limits of your own. Then turn the same tenderness towards yourself, for there are forgotten forests growing within you, old paths, patient, persistent patterns, silent stories settled so deeply they seem to steady the stones beneath your feet. Sit beside them. Do not fight them. Do not follow them blindly. Ask, Who first walked here? What fear fenced this field? What beauty have I passed because I believed I already knew the way? Some answers arrive like dawn, slow, soft, spreading. Some answers scatter like seeds, sleeping for seasons before they bloom. Some remain like distant stars, steady, still, summoning more than giving. Let them. For quests were never meant to gather answers alone. They grow the eyes that see farther, the feet that fall softer, the heart that holds the world with greater wonder. Love then the long road. Bless the broadening bandwidths. Return readily to your former questions with older eyes. Walk these roads again and again, as you may find that neither you nor the nagging questions have remained the same. For answers build shelters, but questions build travelers. And while the question may end the stalled sentence, the question keeps the soul seeking, the spirit stepping, the traveler faithfully walking.
You expect Brett and I to add to that?
Of course. Of course, add to that.
That was pretty thorough.
Fabulous. Well, then we're done. Okay, the stream is over.
No. Did you write that? That was you?
I did. Yes, I did.
Yeah. Brett, can you add to that?
Nope.
So that for me just feels like the theme of what I want to get to, of this idea of questioning being like a journey. So I also wrote down a couple of ideas of, you had said in the chat, Mark, like, oh, how do you ask like a proper question? And that's like kind of been my question, is like how to ask a proper question. And one of the things I came up with was this idea of questions being as like hospitality. So I think that oftentimes we like to ask questions to like be like investigators, like we like want to confirm something or like challenge, right? But like, how can we like instead like evaluate or like ask someone into the space better? And so I was curious how you guys thought of questioning when it comes to like hospitality, like an invitation to share, and what that resonates to you.
Can I ignore what you just said and answer something other?
Sure.
Something I realized maybe 15 years ago. The real questions we have, we don't know how to put them into words. There's this like, what is this?
Is it because we don't know what we want to know? Like we don't know what we want to get out of it? Like we don't know the end goal?
No, so how do I say this? The real questions we don't know how to put into words. Once we figure out how to put it into words, we kind of know the answer. It's like once you can formulate the question, the answer will come to you. It's the unformulated questions that are the real questions. Does that make sense?
I don't know.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
I'm just thinking to myself, when you first said that, my first thing that came to mind is, if I'm formulating the question and I finally get the answer because I've been able to formulate it correctly, am I coming to the answer in my own head, which would imply I'm actually not asking a question. I'm asking a question so that I can derive an answer that I can accept. So it isn't necessarily the correct answer, but it's one that I've been able to formulate in my mind. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying I can understand how you're connecting that dot. But do like, what if when you do ask the question and you think you've got the answer and somebody gives you an answer that's different than the answer that you've derived from coming up with this question? Is then you're in a problem, right? Because now it's like, well, I like my answer, but you know what I mean? Because I can connect that better and it makes more sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but also how you phrase the question.
It's
How do
I
I
think
say
that's
this?
based on a stance you're already taking towards the answer. When you like ask a question, it's already based on an answer you're almost like perceiving already. I think that's what I'm getting at from what you're saying, Mark. Does that track?
Yeah, it's like the way you phrase the question almost produces the answer in itself. So going back to the unformulated questions, they are the real questions. The ones you like, I've got this something nagging on me, but I don't know what it is and I don't know what it looks like, but it's something. And can I put it into words? This is why poets are so valuable, because they can put these like weirdness thing into words.
What do you think?
Sorry,
Andrew?
I like the hand gestures.
Yeah.
I like the hand gestures too. I think the poem was beautiful. Just getting at the difference between like what I enjoyed was the difference between the quest and the questioning. And I think there's the picture of the journey or answers. Like what are we searching for? And because I think there is if there are questions, if there are valid questions, I think there are valid answers. And I think there is truth that will answer it. I think that the tension that we're wrestling with is I think we've been given incomplete answers and forced to accept them as the completeness. Whereas like those answers have never fully satisfied. So we know there are questions and longings for a more complete story, a more complete picture, a more complete adventure we're being invited into. And I think that's something of what we're longing for. That's like the answers we've maybe been given are insufficient. So we're asking the same questions again and again and again, and trying to find deeper and more meaningful, more powerful, more compelling answers to the questions that we might be asking. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Do you think it's because we're like, I don't know, I like to talk about conditioning a lot. Like, do you think it's because there's a conditioning that we have that everything needs to be like perfectly packaged, tied up in a bow, and I can like for sure explain it to the next person if they ask me that same question? Like, do you think that's what we seem to like say is the sufficiency to an answer to a question, is when it like isn't questioned anymore? Does that make sense? Like, because I almost
intelligence.
What?
Diminished intelligence. It's like, oh, don't question it. Just be a robot. Just go along. Just, be a good citizen. Citizen is a very curious word.
Because
what are the questions that maybe come to mind that you may be asking?
I say that again, Andrew.
What are the questions that maybe come to mind?
That wasn't the question.
No.
There's a question in back of Mark's background. We're hearing the voices in your head, Mark.
Oops.
He's good at
misbehaving.
He's good at tuning it all out.
Like I'm trying to think of like the types of questions, like when okay, like I don't know if this is going to be like an exact question, but let's say someone does something that you just don't understand why that they did that thing. Like they did something and it hurt you maybe. And like trying to understand their thought process behind it and like almost like asking it from a like victim's mentality is like trying to get them to give an answer of like an aggressor's position instead of
Okay, I gotta go to the shop. Sorry. Love
Okay.
you all.
Thanks, Mark. And so I think there's a way in which if you are like stuck in the how you're, you know, like, oh, I'm coming from like a victim's position. And so I'm going to ask a question as a victim and get a answer as like an aggressor. It almost like answers the question that I'm actually asking, which is, am I the victim in this? Not why did you do that? You know, like what was the mentality behind this? It's almost like there's like deeper layers to each of these questions. And so I don't think I'm answering your question, but I think what I'm trying to point at is there's this like, we think we're asking one question, but we're actually seeking the answer to something that is like not really the words that we're being like, that we're asking with. Does that make sense? Maybe.
Sorry, I got distracted by Yoav's question in the chat. Can the infinite and the finite ever meet?
Mm.
And I was also just thinking, like, is there a way that actually leads to life? Is there the right way to actually be living? Like, I think a lot of what we've been, I don't know, certain people have been instructing or challenging in the chat, and I think we're trying to find like, are there better ways to live and not? And I think clearly we would say yes, there is. But then the question is like, how do we find that? How do we know what is the right way? How do we question the patterns and our assumptions, and what do we use to challenge those beliefs? Because it's like what I've come to be sure of is I believe what I believe, but I also believe that some of it is wrong. I just don't know which 10%, 20%, maybe more. And so we need each other. We need community. We need fellow travelers. We need scripture. We need things outside of ourselves to guide us on this path as we journey towards something that leads to more life for myself, for my family, for my friends. It's like everything in me. It's like I find it ironic that I was the one who, I don't know, challenged our thinking maybe last week on stories and said the words that shouldn't be named, because I'm that way inclined to find answers and to give answers. But also I know that there needs to be a challenge to that. And so I'm trying to immerse myself in more stories and how to not jump into people's situations. And that's why I raised that book, Theo of Golden. I don't know if you've read it yet, Megan. And it's just the story of that old guy that intervenes in a number of people's lives in a very patient, wise old way. It's like he steps in, and rather than giving the simple, easy solution, he just starts loving them and caring for them. And rather than finding like, hey, you need to fix yourself up in this way, this way, and this way, he actually just recognizes like, hey, this is where they're at. They have a limited capacity because of their background and a complicated history, and starts just intervening in one simple way to help them take a step forward. And I think there's something of that. It's rather than giving this full answer, it's just like, man, how do we love somebody on their journey while helping them take one more step towards a way that actually leads to life? yeah, I don't know if that answers any questions, but it's maybe just helps you understand where I'm coming from.
I love it.
I like what Yohav asked, because like there's a question, right? And it's a heavy question. I mean, how can we, the question is, can the infinite and the finite ever meet? And I mean, I know that maybe in his question, he, because of traditions that we've come out of, it'd be hard to maybe swallow it. But like, that's how Christians kind of understand Jesus. I mean, really, because he's literally declaring the Isaiah prophet that I am the Alpha and the Omega. I am the beginning and the end. Like I was before. And so like to Rob's point, there's really no real way as a finite person to really comprehend an infinite. But resting in Christ and him showing up here in the man form and believing him to be God, there's the bridge, there's the connector. And he's trying to help us connect to this idea. And so it's like, that's as close as we're going to ever get until we meet him, So it's like, there's questions. Sometimes I think some of these questions, well, that's a proposition. Well, oh yeah, okay, like it's like I don't know. I mean, I'm just telling you how I understand it, whether it makes sense or not. I can't rectify it, connecting the dots for you, but I also do rely on the Holy Spirit in that regard. That sometimes somebody's word, or you read something differently all of a sudden, and it just changes. Everything changes for you. And it's just like these questions we ask for each other. Think about when your parents have told you over and over and over, if you do A, your result is going to be B. And you're like, I don't believe that. That's coming through a parent filter. But then your best friend tells you, if you do A, you're going to receive B. And you're like, Eureka. And you go back to your mom and dad and you're like, do you believe this? If I do A, B, and they're like, I've been telling you that crap for years. So it's like sometimes depending on where we're getting the information, sometimes that's a stumbling block for us to receive it, And so, and then sometimes you read the same thing you read 1,000 times and then all of a sudden it clicks. So like, I kind of can't explain it 100%, but I think that's why I think the supernatural is such a special phenomenon, because there's things you just can't explain why all of a sudden you get it.
I think this kind of links back to what Mark was saying about how like the real questions are not the ones that we're able to put into words. And I think there's like some real deep wisdom there, because it's almost like those like eureka moments don't come from you saying, like asking yourself a question, seeking the answer, and then finding it. And then it's like, oh, eureka, most of the time, I think. Rarely, if ever, for me. It's more like you don't even realize that you had this question when you like encounter something that like breaks your frame open. That's like, it answers a question without you even having to ask it. Whereas I think when you actually come to a question that you can say out loud, it seems to me, I wrote down this idea of like, there's like a discomfort. There's like a friction. There's like I don't understand, and I don't like not understanding. And so I'm going to formulate something that will hopefully give me comfort in a deeper understanding. And so I almost feel like a eureka moment feels like almost like an uncomfortable moment for me, it's definitely a movement of energy. Whereas like asking the question feels like a trying to suppress of that energy or something. I don't know if that tracked at all.
No, yeah. I think I mean, like you said, we were talking about at the beginning. It's like, if you're asking a question, could you genuinely want an answer? Or are you asking a question for an agenda? And there are clearly, like we were talking about, we are kidding around about Candace Owens on one of the streams. It's like, she doesn't ask questions to get an answer. She asks questions for an agenda. You know, she's asking questions to either trip somebody up in their answer so that she can dunk on them, or find the flaw so she can slam them. So like there's a clear example of an agenda behind a question. Or and I'll be honest, I mean, if I understand something and I understand you don't understand something, like I actually understand it, right? And I'm asking you a question, I am leading you in that question to the answer that I found. Now, I don't think that what I'm doing in that particular moment is the same as what Candace is doing, right? I don't think I'm doing something with malice intent. I'm doing something to bring you to the point of how I kind of connected a dot. So, but it is weird how we obviously throw a big, you know, like since World Cup happened, you know, like we pull a flag, you know, you're leading me. Well, yeah, I am. I'm honest. I am leading you, but it's not for in a malice intent. It's not this. I don't have some, you know, hidden agenda. I'm just asking you to connect these dots and tell me what you derive of these connected dots, and if the dots that are being connected make sense. Like I have to, you have to give me a little bit of grace in this process as I'm asking the questions. And I usually, when somebody asks a question, I genuinely, and this is probably the problem sometimes in our space, is that sometimes, you know, to determine, like in the comments, you'll answer a question genuinely. Meanwhile, they didn't care what your answer was.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, I look like a dummy because I actually took your question seriously. My bad.
Yeah. What you were saying, B, reminded me of like the old Jordan Peterson lectures where, like, I mean, he would describe himself that it's like he was trying to even take his knowledge a bit further than what it had ever been before. Like, and like that might have been just a good talking point, but I think it seemed like that when he would lecture, it would be trying to answer a question with all of his preparation, everything that he's got, to try and communicate it in a way that it advances the conversation as best as possible. And I think that like that led to something of that experience of the flow state for people, where you enjoyed like a genuine participation in discovery, in a quest to find an answer for the question, but it was a genuine question, even if it was, I don't know, even if it was planned out from his side. It's like, I think this is something that people are really asking and trying to find an answer to. It's like, how do we take what people are genuinely wrestling with? How do we try and like get underneath the personal preferences and say, what is the question beneath that question?
Right.
And how do I use everything that I've got to try and answer this in a way that's compelling for as many people as possible? And I think that's a little bit of what Brett's trying to describe. It's like, if you're in a conversation with somebody where you think you've got a bit of an answer for it, it's like, I need to lead them along that same path. I can't just, hey, here's the answer, let me dump it on top of you. You have to believe what I believe. It's like, if I can take you along the same path and there's a quest along that path, it's like, and I've genuinely found a helpful answer. Might not be the complete answer, but it might be 80% of it, or it might be 70% of it, or whatever. And I think there's something of that quest of like trying to find a genuine answer.
Yeah, Aspasia gets it. You get it.
Yeah, I feel like we, again, like it seems like in modern society right now, we're like using questions to solidify the nuggets of understanding that we have, so that we like don't have to think about them anymore. Whereas like when you mentioned the Jordan Peterson thing, or even I think of like, you know, I'm not like, I don't know all the scripture by any means, but I feel like when I think about Jesus and the types of questions he asked, I don't think that they were to a specific, I don't think what he was asking was ever what he was asking. You know what I mean? Like he was obviously like asking questions and telling stories and stuff, and they were getting to like points, but I think it was like always for like a larger purpose. And I think that we tend to use our questions to come to a smaller understanding, when I think it should be using that smaller understanding to break something open to a larger discovery. It's almost like each of the questions is supposed to, like, have you ever played that game of like with like the ice and like you're like breaking it and it like breaks open the bottom, whatever? That's what I'm thinking of. It's like each one is like breaking open one of those and you're like successfully getting one space out, but it's really like almost like destroying the whole thing so that it's like could be put together in a totally different way. And so like I think that's what we're supposed to be using our questions for. Like for example, when Jordan Peterson asks about like, you know, could I be an SS guard? Could I be a great SS guard? It's like, does really like asking that particular question matter in the world? It kind of feels like a very weird, heavy question to ask. But if you ask yourself that and genuinely go through the journey of considering whether you would ever have that inside of you, it breaks open your idea of who you are and what people are capable of. And I think that is what questions are supposed to do. It's supposed to break your understanding of the universe, of the world, of yourself, of like something way bigger than just that question.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I was thinking about like communicators, like the most effective communicators are ones that are answering my question. Like they already like expected my question, you know? And so like, you'll listen to somebody like either give a speech or a pastor give a sermon or, you know, and you'll have all these questions that in your mind that are coming up and nothing's being answered. But yet, like in communicate, if you ever took a communications class, like one of the first things they do is if you had actually access to your audience before you give this speech, you could send out a survey, right? Get them to answer questions, you know, and then at the end have a comment, right, section or something that they could ask like a question based off the questions that the survey you just did. And then you go back and you kind of take all this information in. And this is because you're not naturally intuitive, perhaps, you know, or you just don't know these questions would be popping up. And that's why it's a 101 class, right? But like a guy, and I'm only using this because for me, there was a way about him that I appreciated. Artsy Sproles was a really amazing communicator. For a lot of reasons. But one of the things that I always found fascinating about him is as he's explaining something, especially when it's really hard, it seems like every time a question would pop up into my brain about philosophy or theology, it seemed like the very next sentence or two, he was addressing what was popping up in my head. And I'm like, now see, pastors don't do that. Like, they run away from those difficult questions. Like they're gearing their speech talk. They don't want to bring needless questions up. But no, he runs to the question. And I just had appreciated that. And there's some speakers that naturally are very effective at doing that for you, to know that you're really not putting something out there, right? You're legitimately putting something out. And you want people to think about these things, and then you're giving something significant to fill that question that most people would run from, you know? And I like that. And I mean, it's kind of like parallel to the question thing, but I'm just like it also works in conversation. Yeah. It's like if I'm talking to you and I'm avoiding, like we were talking about salesmanship the other day. Like there's just certain things as a salesman, because you're trying to sell a product, that you're not going to volunteer. Like you're not going to go down these roads because it might add another roadblock. That was the thing I used to get in trouble with all the time. Like you give them too much information. Like you literally, you add extra things they hadn't considered into their sale, and they walk out not buying anything. And I was like, well, I mean, I just want them to have all the information, like to make a good decision. Like, yeah, but they weren't even thinking those things, you know? And I'm like, I kind of feel like they should have been thinking those things.
Too much of a pastor, not enough of a salesman there, Brett. You care for the people too much. But Joe, what you were saying, I think Paul, like in Romans, is a pretty good example of that. You just read through it, and it's like he communicates something, and then he's like, "Oh, but you might actually ask this question," and then he's going to give an answer, and then you might ask this question, and it's like it's almost answering what his, I don't know, people are that he's writing to.
Yeah, they're better connected to it.
Yeah,
like they're better
Be
connected.
what you
to
were
the
saying
people.
with that ice game. I think the challenge is, like with a question, is like there's a point where you've questioned too many things in that game and everything just falls out.
Right.
So, or like C.S. Lewis, it's like we see through things so we can actually see the truth, not to keep seeing through forever. So he says it far better than that. But so it gets down to then the fundamental like axioms. It's like, what do you actually rely on? Where's the answer? It's saying like comments there. It's like, how can we know answers that are outside of the finite? Because we are in this finite world. It's like, even thinking of Yoav's question, like my mind also went to Jesus first, but actually we could go just to Moses at the burning bush, or any other like revelation from God into the world. It's like the infinite and finite can meet if we're saying it's God and creation, wherever God chooses. Whenever he chooses to reveal himself in a way other than the world that he has created, can be a moment of that meeting. It may not be synergy, but it may bring some form of revelation that we can't find purely on our own. And I think those are the questions that we're actually asking deep down below all the other questions. Is there something that's true below everything? And then how do I know that? And how do I live into that? What is that? Yeah. I always think of this A.W. Tozer quote, I think it is. It says the most important thing a man thinks is what he thinks about when he thinks about God. It's like what comes to mind. And it's like when you start thinking about God, it's like what comes to mind is probably the thing that defines your life more than anything else.
I think about the people say let's do a thought experiment, or like what Megan was talking about with the guards in Germany, or like what he was trying to convey. It's like, I don't know that it's like people really don't like doing thought experiments as much. It's like, because there's a natural challenging that's taking place in your psyche. And it's like, so like, as an example, what if Jesus is right? Like, what if when you read this verse and he says what he says about himself, that he is the I am, what if that was right? What if the fourth man in the fire was a Christophany, where, it was a pre-incarnate Jesus, or an angel that's getting praised? That doesn't make any sense, because angels don't get worshipped, right? But yet it's okay for this particular person to bow down to this particular angel. Like, what if this is a Christophany? What if it's Jesus? What if that's the case? And it's like, and if you were to step back and go, man, if that is true, that would be the most beautiful thing, and all these other stories would be so beautiful. Well, I can't accept that. Okay, well, at least you went down the road. But like, if you're instantly already coming up with rebuttals for every situation, it's like you're not playing the what if game. You're not doing the thought experiment and seeing it. What would this mean if I was wrong about my thoughts on this? And so, like, the challenging of it, I mean, it's about like your orientation to how you're doing everything. Like, are you doing this to genuinely seek Are you doing this because you want to rest on your own laurels, your own intellect, and say, but it doesn't mean that everything you've learned is garbage. It's just like it's a fine tuning of the things you've learned. And now you kind of fine tuned it even more. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's, if you do it in the latter way versus if you do it in the first way, you can come out with some really amazing results. Whereas if you do it, in the former way, it's like, yeah, I'm never going to get answers because I'm never going to allow myself to be challenged.
Well, I think this again kind of goes back to what Mark was saying about like the questions that you're not particularly asking, but are like the real questions you have, and how I think you can be encountering the answers to these questions if you put yourself in the position of the people that you encounter in the world. So like example, like if Andrew were to come to me and talk to me about a problem that he's having with his family, and if I were to like genuinely listen and go on the journey, on Andrew's journey, as though I'm stepping into his shoes, I might actually learn something and answer a question that I didn't know I had about myself or about the world. And I think we don't interact like that. Like we don't, because we either are seeking something or not seeking something. And I think that like to go on a journey, you're like also seeking something and not seeking something at the same time. Like if you just are like traveling west, you don't know what you're going to find, but you're like seeking newness. That's how I feel like we're supposed to be encountering each other in the world. And then these questions that we have just get like, I don't know, just answered for us because we're like actually embodying someone else's story rather than someone else's particular question. And then we get the answer that we need. Does that make sense, Andrew? Like what I'm trying to say? Like, I feel like this should be happening all the time. It's not, oh, we're bad at thought experiments. I think we're like bad at empathy. I think we're bad at putting ourselves not in our own shoes and saying that this is the right seat to sit in. And so we're not seeing the world, and answers are in the world all around us. But if we're only sitting in our seat and we have our little blinders on, then like, of course we're not getting any answers. Something like that.
Yeah, I would have loved to see Steph's stuff. Too bad she can't jump on.
Sorry, my AirPod's connected to a different device for a little bit, so I lost that last little bit.
What? Oh, you mean Megan's stuff?
Yeah. But I think what Megan, what you were saying, I think we are so caught up, unfortunately, in our own stuff, in our own story, in our own challenges. A lot of the time, we don't have the time to empathize with somebody else or even sympathize with them and like hear out their story so we can learn from it. I think we've lost the shared stories, which I think is what we're trying to almost like reimagine with Peugeot, with like the fairy tale. It's like we used to have shared stories that, whether we realized it or not, was teaching us like something of shared values.
Right.
And yeah, I think it's how do we rediscover that shared society, shared community, shared stories, so we can actually learn from each other.
I think it's really hard too when you've had success with your story. You've had success with the decisions that you made, and you see other people and you just like, well, this is where I've had the most success, so I'm not going to question anything else, and everybody else is wrong. I just have had more success than you. So like therein lies like a judgment factor of someone else. But when you like think of something from somebody that's super elite, that's intelligent, and you say, I could potentially learn from that person. Yeah, they've been successful. Yeah, they've done well, maybe. Maybe they, whatever. But if I discount them instantly because of that,
Mm.
I'd be losing out on a potential revelation, right, for myself. And then also, if I discount like a homeless person, right, and I say, well, they just don't have success in life, right? So I can't learn anything from them, but I can teach them a lot. It's like, well, now you're missing the point too. Like, yeah, nobody's doubting that you could potentially, learn something from them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or that you could definitely teach them something. But the idea that I've learned so much, I've grown so much, I have so much to offer. Yeah, that's true. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're not even being open to the possibility that you have a missing link here.
Hmm.
Then there's a problem. It's like I see Chad came in. I was thinking to myself, the term that was when you guys were talking, I was thinking about the term resting on my laurels. Like that's used a lot. Like that happens a lot, you know?
Yeah. I feel like the thing that you were talking about that
Andrew.
I probably have said before. But one of them is we like when something, is good or makes sense, we like to sort of like repeat that. It kind of goes back to me talking about the dogs that I saw on the path. It was like, oh, these beautiful dogs. And then like just thinking about trying to get back to seeing those beautiful dogs and realizing that I'm never in the present moment. So that's just another thing to like remember when we're like trying to just repeat something. It's like, what do they say? Like, trying to do the same thing over and over. Like, isn't that like insanity, right? Like there's like some part of that is like trying to seek that same thing over and over that has worked in the past is almost like a little bit insane. But then also like this idea that I like to say you can learn, you can get dating advice from a 12-year-old, right? Like who's never been on a date before, right? There's like something about that, like innocent knowledge of like something that doesn't know the rules. Or like, I like to also say, I play disc golf and I love going to a course I've never played before because I haven't seen the bad shots. Because when you load the like bad shots, you just go in and you just play freely, right? And so there's something about the like going to like a 12-year-old, for going back to there, about like dating advice. It's like if you just say, oh, I could never learn from them about any sort of thing because they've never been on a date before, then you could like definitely miss the wisdom there. And so assuming that anyone can't give you wisdom is like, it's like just missing out on the wisdom of the world, is missing out on these questions you have being answered. I don't know if any of that.
Having said that, like I always saw lots of young, especially young men, I think young women do the same thing, of getting a lot of dating advice or marriage advice from their peers that haven't necessarily been through it. And it's like, maybe there's wisdom in asking those questions of people that have actually been through that journey or like been through that journey successfully. And it's like,
We just were talking about that though. Like if that's the only marker you use to determine whether it's good sound advice, you might be missing out. Again, I agree. Like I surround myself, like I have a group that's a bunch of older men, that I trust in their walk. Like I see fruits of their walk. So I put myself in an environment where I get to let them share things with me from what you're talking about, right? Of a sound learned life, right? But I also will put myself in a position with a bunch of people that aren't like that, but
As
I
you
can
should.
still, right. And I could still learn some tremendous things, but it depends on the relationship that I have with them. Like, are they genuinely humble or are they just, are they lost in their own, melee of self? Like, well, the more I get to know you, the better off I'm going to genuinely understand that you genuinely are humble, even though you might not have all the answers. You know what I mean? And I can learn some valuable things in those settings as well.
I almost feel like it doesn't really matter though. I hate to say, like, it almost doesn't matter if, like, whether you have a relationship with them or not. It's like a relationship to the world or whatever that matters. Like relationship to being open enough to receive that which is like good. Even if someone has like bad intentions or bad morals, I feel like you can still learn something about yourself or the world from them, whether
Sure.
they're like good or not. Like, you don't have to necessarily be in relationship with them, but I think having that, and I think that's what I mean by like being open to like to everything, almost like being like, in my poem I write about these like the open hands, right? Instead of like grasping, like you can hold something without holding something, right? And I think that's the image I keep like coming to, is like that's what we're supposed to be doing with the world, is like constantly like open.
Yeah, I would push back a little on it. Let me ask you a question though. I agree. But like, let's use an example. I'm not going to name names, but a specific person that is always not trying to communicate with you. Like they just
Sorry,
want.
Brett.
No, and I didn't want to out. I didn't want to out you here, Andrew. But like they genuinely don't care about what's coming out of your mouth, and it's a one-way communication. To your point making, can I learn something from it? Yes, I can. I obviously can. But when we're talking about like, I feel like it's a different type of learning. If anything, I feel like I learn more about myself in those predicaments versus like when somebody genuinely cares about what's coming out of my mouth and genuinely wants to understand me and we're communicating, I'm able to learn in a different way. You know what I mean?
I mean, definitely. I think the stronger the relationship, the more the trust, the more the like respect. I think there's opportunity to learn more. But Megan, I think you're right. Like there's opportunity to learn from everybody. I think Peterson even had that thing. It's like go into every relationship, especially every interaction with any other human, with the potential that you could actually learn something. I think that's helpful. I think it still comes back to the question for me is like, how do you discern which are the right ice blocks to knock out? What are the what are the filters that you're using at the moment to kind of assess that? Like, yeah. What would you say, B? Do you have a grid or a framework, or you just what resonates the most, or what?
No, because I think that, again, whenever I use the same word over and over, it like loses its meaning. But we're using the word question here. But whenever I like, seems like the question to me. Like what is in place of me having the open handsness to the world to receive the answers of the questions I'm not particularly answering or asking, if that makes any sense. It's like, what is in the way of me being open to receiving the world as it is? Because I believe that like all the answers that we're seeking are out there and in here. Like it's already, we're just uncovering them, discovering them. Like it's not like like the creation, even the creations we have, I think are something that we're discovering and uncovering, not like that's just, it's never happened before. I think it's like, it just is there and we just have to tap into that like ability. And so I think the question for me is like, how do I like see all these filters I'm putting in place, or these things that are getting in the way of me being able to connect? Because I think it's just the connection that allows for these answers to come about, if that makes sense.
Chad, I was talking about Claire. I was just being polite. I don't understand what the problem is.
I find most of these conversations are more productive when we ignore a lot of the comments in the chat, unfortunately. What do you have to say, Mark? Did you get the Nutella?
I forgot the Nutella.
Ugh.
My daughter's going to be angry when she finds out. But hey, someone else can go to the shop. Anyway, kind of related to what you just said, B, and what I said at the beginning of the podcast. The question that we have that we haven't managed to put into words yet, that's the real questions we have. When we put it into words, it becomes formulaic, and then the answer pops out really easily and blah blah blah. But the unworded question, it's so tempting to try and vocalize it. Whereas if we just leave it as a mystery, and it is a mystery at this point, it's like, what is that? And we just leave it as a mystery, then this is where knowledge and understanding and all these things grow from. So I'm arguing that we need to resist the temptation of putting mysteries into words. I'm also munching a crisp sandwich. Sorry.
I don't know. I'm drawn to some of the beauty of that, and I think there's definitely truth in it. Everything in me screams no, but there are the correct answers, and like I know there's an element of that that's like that's unacceptable and unwelcome, but I think it's the way that I reconcile it is I think it's primarily the answers are relational rather than just a formula of right and wrong. And I think
sorry, what do you mean the answers are relational? Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So I think the questions that are deeper than the questions that we're asking is questions of, is there God? What does he think about me? What does that mean about my identity? What does it mean about the way I'm supposed to live? What does it mean about the people around me? What does it mean about the evil in the world? And how do I find answers that actually make sense of all of those big questions? And then how does that filter into my day-to-day life? Like, do I actually live up to those ideals that I have? And I think the answers that we give to that comprise our worldview. And it's what we were talking about a little bit last week of the stories that we imagine that govern the world and how much our stories match to that and how far short of the ideal we live up to and how quickly we judge people for falling short of it. And I think that's what I was saying, like in the beginning, I think we have questions, but we substitute very simple answers for other people's like really deep questions when they're asking a question like what you were saying, Mark, far deeper than the question they're actually asking. They're asking a question of like, oh, so you say I'm going to hell. And it's like, no, that's not the question I'm trying to answer. I'm trying to say there's actually a way that leads to life. And that maybe has implications. But the deeper questions is, who are we? Do we belong? How do we love each other? How do those all fit together? And I have my way of tying them together. But as I said, I know that there's incorrect elements of the story that I have. But I still want to try and communicate that story as best I can. And through refining that with other people that seem to be trying to find the healthiest answers and the healthiest way to communicate that to other people, I think we learn to communicate them better and not try and force our, I don't know, simplistic answers on people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then Andrew, how would you then give yourself or other people like feedback? Like from that stance, like how would you like give yourself or other people?
So I think that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to build enough relational like stability and credibility to really explore the fundamentals of our beliefs. Like PBK would always talk about your axioms, and it's like, what are the fundamental areas of your belief? And where there's disagreement there, yeah, we might not be able to see eye to eye easily. But generally, there'll be a lot of overlap on the practical outworking of it, which is, I think, where we're finding it's like we've got like these, like those Venn diagrams, where there's a lot of overlap in the bigger picture, where we can easily find community and connection on those areas and maybe have discussion on the areas that differ. And then I can just present like, hey, my perspective is that if God has created the world, I have to trust his revelation of himself, of his nature, and what he's calling us to. I believe the best representation of that is in Jesus. And then that's why I trust the scriptures. And that's why I try and find my guide through that. I see a lot of overlap in like various different expressions in different religions and humanity across the world, where there's a lot of shared perspectives, a lot of shared questions, a lot of shared longings. So I can appreciate those. But I think the best representation, I have to come back, that's why I'm a Christian, is I think that's the guiding point for me. And that becomes like my framework that I think that the TLC is a space where there's a lot of people in high in openness. I'm a Christian that's fairly high in openness. So I've been known to I don't know, be on those borderlines of appearing to be a heretic, as like OG Rose says, it's like I'm always interested in what is the best way to communicate this in a way that's the least threatening to the most amount of people, while still compelling and holding the synthesis of as much truth as possible. I don't claim to have arrived and be this ideal theologian or anything. I'm just doing my best to try and say like, hey, this is what I believe. I want to learn to live it as best I possibly can and communicate it to the people that I call friends and family and anybody else that I come into contact with. So I think it's a little bit of how I'm trying to do it.
That was very well articulated. Oh, Mark, you're muted.
You're just berating me as you're muted, Mark.
There you go.
I just unmuted you, Mark. So
Oh, oops. I said, you're going to go to hell, boy, if you sin. Your original question, B, about feedback is, firstly, we don't have to give it. Secondly, we're going to give it. Okay, so there's verbal feedback, and then there's ignoring someone, and then there's dismissing someone, and there's all these mechanisms of feedback that we give to people that are almost subconscious. And so we give feedback regardless of whether we wish to or not. It's
Sure.
going to happen. It's just, should I say it? You've already said it. You just didn't use words.
Yeah, I agree. And that kind of goes back to, again, those questions that ought not be even verbalized. It's the same thing of like the feedback that doesn't even need to be verbalized. Like those seem to add to the answering of those unasked questions, if that makes sense. Like there's like this underlying question and answering that seems to be happening in the world that we're like not paying attention to because it's like not in the words, it's not in the logos. And I'm trying to point out that like this question and answering is happening constantly. And so how can we be like open to receiving and asking, if that makes any sense?
Okay, so I have a different view of the Logos to probably every Christian on the planet. Not intentionally.
The only one, folks. He's the only one.
So I relate the Logos to the electromagnetic force. So the electromagnetic force is like a infinite span of frequencies that give light, that give audio, that give radio, that give microwave, that give X-rays. That's all in the electromagnetic force, but it also gives movement. And so me doing this gesture is part of the logos. My movement is part of the logos. My turning my head away in disgust is part of the logos. It's all communication. It's all relation. Brett's got this look on his face. Tell me your thoughts, young man.
I was wondering how you take that verse and the logos became flesh and dwelt among us. You think it still tracks with your idea of electromagnetic fields?
It's the same thing.
Is it? Flesh?
Yeah. How can you?
How can magnetic force become flesh?
Electromagnetic.
Aren't we just balls of energy, Brett? Isn't that what we are? Just like
Oh boy.
a little bit closer together than other pieces of energy.
Oh boy.
Okay, so
I might take a position in between the two of you,
Okay.
where it's like I love that the logos became flesh. It's like if you look at the logos, it's often translated the word, but it can also be the message. It's the message of God became flesh in Jesus. He's always has been.
Yes, I know.
But God has always been trying to communicate his message to humanity from when the word came to Abraham and to Moses. And there's the message that actually came. God was revealing himself to them. That developed and got actually articulated into scripture. But then that message, which Brett, you even saying, there's theophanies. So there was something of a message that was embedded inside of the message to the Jews that was greater than the law that was given to Moses. There was a way inside the way that was given. So there was a way that almost led to life, which I think is piggybacking on like the Greek idea of logos being almost the path that leads to greatest life for everybody in a sense, which I think is what you're getting at with the energy, the communication, the idea that's actually below everything, the gravity, as Daring Hobbit is saying. But the ultimate expression of that is the logos become flesh. It's the ultimate message of what God is like.
Hey, Chad.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm gonna actually.
So those two thinky talking for you, Chad.
No, I don't know why you guys think that I have a problem with two thinky talkie. It's weird. And people think that. I don't think it's true.
sorry, Chad. What do you not think is true?
That I have a problem with two thinky talkie. I think when you are being when you're being disconnected from I think examples of your own life or something like that, then that gets a little annoying. But we're gonna talk about whatever. I want to concur.
I agree with you, Chad. I agree
with what Mark was saying. That was interesting. I've never heard that idea, but then and then I'm thinking about kind of like the something about the man being made from clay and having life breathed into him, something like that. And there's something there, I think, and then I think whatever he made would need something to perceive, and that's our consciousness. I think it's like a reciprocal expression. The logo. So yeah, it's like the electromagnetic field. It's our consciousness. It's his will, whatever. That's all I got to
Chad,
say.
you just blew my mind with that something to perceive statement. I'm like, oh, God, that explains stuff. But I can't. I need to work through. Like, thank you, Chad.
You just have to figure out the question mark, and then you'll have the answer.
Eh.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, perception, perceive.
All right. I'm doing a little check-in. How's everyone feeling? Are we kind of coming to a good stopping point, you think?
I need to work.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think Chris is on too.
Perfect. Does anyone have sort of like a final words that they want to go around and do? I have an ending poem, so I'm gonna kick you guys off anyways to do the last thing. But
No. We have closing thoughts. You just end with a poem, I think.
Okay. This one rhymes. So those of you who don't like the really artsy things, this might be a little bit more fun. So I'll read it while you guys.
Can I
rhyme.
just quickly
Yeah.
say I'm sure I had some final thoughts, but Chad just knocked everything else out of my head.
He
and I'm
really
just like,
did.
oh. So I'm gonna drop off now then and listen to your poem.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your input, Mark. We
Love you
appreciate
guys.
See you, Mark.
Agreed. I think what Chad said was very profound. So if you didn't listen to it, go back. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on today. This final poem is called "The Way of Questions." So I like to think of the way, the stance, the how-ness of things. So the way of questions. Questions are pathways, quiet and slow, not where truth begins, but where truth may go. They do not capture, they do not confine, they simply clear a place to shine. They loosen the soil, they lift the stone, until what was hidden may make itself known. They ask with wonder, they wait with grace, they leave an open, unhurried space. For truth, like spring, will not be pressed. It comes to hearts that know to rest. Not every answer needs chasing down. Some rise like stars when night comes around. So ask, then listen, seek, then see, leave room for more than mere certainty. For questions are paths, and if they are walked well, they soon become the place where our truths may dwell.
Nice. Good way to end.
Thank you guys so much. Let's head on over to Chris. If you
Thanks,
haven't
Pete.
already gone already. Appreciate you,
Thanks.
Brett. Appreciate you, Andrew.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mark and Chad. Everyone in the chat. Until next time.
You might want to work your chat thing out.
Yeah. We'll work it out eventually. One day.
I only muted her. I didn't ban